Hello, everyone, and welcome into today's Irish NFL Show episode. You will be listening to this on the Sunday of week 2 of the NFL season, and I am delighted to have a good friend of the show back today as we usher, I suppose, in week 2 and, all of the madness of week 1, and now we're here. It is the rules analyst from Fox Sports, but he wears so many different hats. Dean Blandino, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm always excited to come back and get on this show and talk a little NFL football.
Well, whenever I suppose we have the opportunity to talk to you, it generally means either we're at the start of a new season or we're coming up to the playoffs. So it's always a good thing. But you have been busy since you were last on because you were involved once again. You went back to work with the XFL. What was that like, Dean?
Such a great experience. And, you know, obviously the season got cut short in 2020 with COVID, and to bring the XFL back with new leadership and great people involved, and from Danny Garcia to Dwayne Johnson and the people at Redbird and folks that I had worked with at the NFL for a long time, Russ Brandon, Doug Whaley, Mark Ross, and others. It was such a great experience to be able to get through the whole season and give fans a kind of a peek behind the curtain, so to say, and let them listen in and hear what was happening with our replay decisions and what the officials are talking about. And it was just I enjoyed it so much, and it was a great experience.
And for fans on this little island, Dean, it is especially important because Daniel Whelan, who was with the Saints last summer, it didn't work out for him, went the XFL, had a fantastic campaign, obviously, and he made his debut for the Green Bay Packers. So it's the first Irishman in the league in nearly 40 years. But is that, I suppose, that him and others, is this a new conveyor belt into the NFL?
Absolutely. That it's, we call it the League of Opportunity, and spring football is just that opportunity for players that, whether they have been in training camp and didn't make the team, or have never been on an NFL roster, for a chance for them to get more snaps and to allow the NFL to get a look. And like Daniel Whelan, and now we have the international players and others from all over the world who get an opportunity to play. Look, they're not, if they're not on an NFL roster, if they're not on a practice squad, they're not going to get those opportunities. And now you have spring football, and you can get those opportunities. And obviously it worked out for Daniel. He's in the NFL in Green Bay in week 1, and we had that game, and it was just so cool to see someone like that, fulfill that dream. Like you said, the first Irishman in the NFL in 40 years. And there were so many other dreams that were fulfilled from players that played in the XFL and in the USFL and played in the spring. It was awesome.
Yeah, no, it's really fantastic, and long may it continue. Now, I suppose one of the things I was thinking about, obviously, when we have you on, is obviously in relation to rules and stuff. But we're in a new Premier League season. We're just coming off the back of the Women's World Cup. There is still 4 years on. There's still this debate about VAR in soccer, right? And because soccer obviously didn't take to instant replay as quickly as American football did. But I'm wondering, Dean, from your perspective, does it increase or already unrealistic expectations on officials and referees? Because everyone else gets to make a mistake. Tom Brady, right, the most decorated NFL player of all time, it wasn't always perfect. He made mistakes. Coaches, Don Shula made mistakes, and as soon as a referee makes a mistake, certainly in the Premier League, they get pulled immediately. Josh Allen had a horrible game on Monday night. Josh Allen's going to take to the field, but once a referee makes mistakes, we got to yank these guys from the spotlight. Yeah. Are we being even more unfair than we already were?
But well, yeah, there's no question. I think there's standards, and like you said, the players sometimes make mistakes, coaches make mistakes, officials make mistakes, but we tend to highlight the officials' mistakes, and we want some accountability. We talk about, we got to hold the officials accountable. Well, officials, I can't think of another profession, I really can't, that are evaluated as rigorous as officials are, right? From not just from the public, from watching the game and the microscope they're under, but then by their own peers, by leadership, officiating leadership, they're evaluated and they are held accountable. And I do think we hold them to an unreasonable standard. And I think instant replay, for the most part, is a positive, but it does create, there's a disconnect between an official making a call at full speed from their perspective and us getting to evaluate that decision from 6 different angles and super slow motion. And I think that's where that disconnect lies, where we sit there and we see it 6 times and we say, well, how could that official miss that when they get one look at it at full speed from just their angle? And I think that's where replay sometimes does create that unrealistic standard. It helps more than it hurts. But I do think American football was perfect for instant replay because American football has the natural stops, right? It has the breaks after each play. And so it's fans are used to those stoppages where you talk about soccer and you talk about it's more free flowing. And so it doesn't lend itself to a lot of interruptions. And I think that's been probably one of the bigger hurdles as we think about VAR and we think about instant replay in soccer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does help, right? In that essentially we all want the game to be as fair as possible, but ultimately, two people can look at the same situation and rule it differently. Whether that is, a roughing the passer call, whether that is a penalty kick in soccer, there is these margins there, and I suppose that leads on to one of the talking points, and I know that I saw that you had a video out there and a piece, and you obviously around the Chiefs and the O line, and I suppose, from my perspective, right, just as a fan who watches the sport, I can understand referees missing a decision because, as I said, it happens so quick. And even when you're watching a video replay, you might just take a different angle on it than, somebody else. But when something happens repeatedly, is that an area that we should be really looking to clean up, maybe more so than others?
No question. And like you said, I think sometimes we don't I mean, on the surface, we don't want to accept that officials make mistakes, but I think we can live with, hey, full speed. Oh my gosh, that happens so fast. The players are moving fast. The officials are trying to get in position that sometimes they're not gonna get a great look, or for whatever reason, we're gonna miss a call from time to time. But I think when you see something like that Thursday night last week, where you've got a tackle not aligning on the line of scrimmage, and this is something where this is not something new. The officials, the mechanics are, you warn the player, the coach is told that the player's been warned, and then you flag after that, and it corrects itself at that point. So this felt like something that could have been easily corrected and just wasn't. And I think that's where officiating leadership will put a training tape out this week to all of their officials. And part of that training tape was showing examples of tackles who were off the line and re-emphasizing the fact that we have to warn and then flag when they're not on the line of scrimmage. So I don't think we'll see the examples this week, upcoming week 2, that we did in week 1. And that's obviously, you don't want officials to repeat those mistakes. You want to correct them and make sure that we're learning. We take it as a learning opportunity and we get better going forward.
And obviously, when you have a situation like that gets kind of so much coverage in a primetime game, and then it becomes the talking point, and there's so many talking heads, including podcasts nowadays. I'm curious, like, as you say, the league or the referees have all received the tape this week. In your experience, do coaches, are they going to highlight to their tackles like, hey, there's going to be increased scrutiny on this week, you guys need to ensure that everything is by the book?
No doubt, no doubt. And that's why they share that information with the clubs. That's why that communication is so important. If the officials are going to emphasize something, it's important that the coaches understand that. Because in a perfect world, right? There are no fouls, right? The players can correct, and they can abide by, what the standard is, and but there's an onus on the officials to provide a clear guideline and to provide a bar of where is the line, and to consistently officiate that line throughout the game. And that's where, in that game, the Chiefs Lions game, if you don't call it for the first 3 quarters, you can't then start calling it in the fourth quarter, because you've established where the bar is. And I think that's where early on, this week, I think we'll certainly see more warnings. I think we will see more flags, and the coaches are aware of that, and they know they don't want a 70-yard touchdown pass taken back on a 5-yard illegal formation penalty. So they're going to make sure that their players are aware of it.
In terms of setting a precedent, I already know we're going to hear from Eagles fans in relation to that. Um, can I ask? It's maybe a slight tangent, but I know whenever you've been on with us and whenever I've seen you interviewed, like, player safety is kind of paramount for you. It's one of the key things you look for and that you advocate for, is the way in which we can change it. The situation around turf, and obviously with the Aaron Rodgers situation, we have seen players come out again this week. We saw it last season when players went down. Players have kind of said it time and time again. We know that if stadiums, to go back to our soccer discussion, we know if they want to host World Cup matches, they're going to have to go to grass. Are we ever going to be in that situation? Like, or what's your perspective? I think a wider question around the turf situation from an officiating viewpoint, Dean.
Sure, I think, and officials get injured as well, and they're running around on the turf, and I think, look, I think there's competing interests. Player safety is the top priority, and the NFL does consider that when they look at their guiding principles, pillars, values, core values, whatever you want to say. The player safety, health and safety of the players is so important and paramount. But then you have, the cost of putting in a grass field and maintaining that, right? That's a factor, and I don't think that factor should outweigh the health and safety of our players. Some injuries are a result of playing on turf. It's happened. Some are just, it just would have happened on turf. It would have happened on the grass. I think if you ask players, if you ask officials, they prefer to play on natural grass. It's more forgiving. It's less wear and tear. Like you said, the World Cup is going to be in North America in 2026, and those stadiums that want to host games are going to have to put in that grass. And then you look at it as an NFL player, you say, okay, I play in this stadium and I play 8 home games, and you're going to put in grass for a tournament that comes around once. If they play it every 4 years, but it's not in this stadium. Maybe it's every 30 years, and you're going to put that grass field in for that. So I get it from that perspective. And I think, again, I think health and safety should win at the end of the day, and we should figure out a way to have the safest playing surfaces. Sometimes injuries, they're just going to happen. It happens in all sport. But I think if we can have the safest, and mitigate or at least reduce the opportunity for the certain types of injuries with natural grass, I think we should do it.
Yeah, and hopefully that will prove to be the case. I mean, I think I can't even imagine, like, to go back. Like, there used to be what were referred to as plastic pitches
Oh
in
my God.
England back in the 80s, and
Yeah.
they got rid of it because of injuries and because of
Yeah.
the way the ball
We
used
we call
to
it
bounce.
we call it AstroTurf in America. So yeah, and it was like playing on concrete with just a little slight green, almost like a little carpet. So it was not very fun to fall on.
No, and certainly made life even more difficult for goalkeepers. But before I let you go, one of the other things you did during the off season, because you are now synonymous with officiating, was you were one of the officials at the Beer Olympics with Busted with the Boys. What was that like?
I'd like to, I think if we can work it out, because I feel like the Beer Olympics, if we could go international and maybe come
That
to
that's
Ireland,
what. Yeah.
I feel like it would be a big hit in Ireland. I've never been to Ireland. I've been to England. I've been to Scotland. It is on my bucket list. And if we could do an international, I'll talk to those guys and see if we can figure it out. But it was a lot of fun, and it was definitely it was eye opening, because when you have these players like George Kittle and David Bakhtiari and others, um, DeForest Buckner, who are such competitors on the football field. And then you think, okay, this is fun. And they're just as competitive in the beer Olympics. And it was, when we're arguing about certain rules in games involving chugging beer, it was a lot of fun. And I know that made the rounds on social media. So
I'm glad you mentioned it because I saw it and I was like, I mean, we're calling it Beer Olympics. Okay, it's a bit of fun, but surely you've got to invite the Irish and the Germans,
I
and
agree.
you know,
International, absolutely. This is I don't think that drinking beer is exclusive to America. So I think we can work that out.
well, I definitely, and George was here. He was here last summer for actually in summer 2022 for a wedding, and definitely I would say he would certainly be open. But I think yeah, Will and Taylor, if you guys are listening, let make it international. I guarantee, like Field of Dreams, if you host it, they will
Oh,
come.
absolutely. We'll work on that. That's going to be my goal for 2024.
Dean, you are always so generous with your time. You make the game, I think, so much more accessible to people. And we love having you on our screens. And just want to thank you for taking the time to chat to me today.
You're always welcome and always ready to come back, whether it's playoffs or if there's a controversial call. Let's talk about it. So always ready to come back and always enjoy it.
Thanks, Dean.